turning points are the time at which a situation starts to change in an important way. So this could be in life in general, from being well to being sick, could be in your career, from going into work or changing jobs. This could be going to university, leaving university. This could be entering into a marriage. This could be coming out of a relationship. This could be having children, going from one child to two children. Just a change in situation has the potential to be a turning point in our lives. Dictionary.com says a turning point is a time at which a decisive change in a situation occurs. So I like to see as the first definition being part one and the second definition being part two. In the sense that when our situations or our circumstances change, that will be a turning point in our lives. Whether we like it or not, our lives will change one way or another. In which direction it will go can be determined by the decision that we make in those changing turning points. If we look at the story of Ruth, we know that Ruth married into an Israelite family, and things were probably going well. I don't know, it doesn't really say, but I'm sure things were going nice and well. But at some point, things completely turned around. Her father-in-law passed away, her husband passed away, her husband's brother passed away, and it was just her sister-in-law, Orpah, and her mother-in-law. And I can just imagine being in this situation and just being like, where do you go from there? And at that time as well, being a widow, I don't know, I don't want to generalize, but in today's day and age, you know, they can still work, they can still have nice cars, have nice houses, still go on holidays. But in those days, having a man in your life was quite important for women at that time to be able to just survive and work and so on and so forth. And so this obviously changed her life dramatically. Whether she liked it or not, it was going to have some form of an impact. And there came a time when she had to make a change, where she had to make a decision, And Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, you know, I bless you to go back to your family. At that age, she wasn't necessarily old. She could have remarried, started her life again, had children, etc., etc. But Ruth chose to go with Naomi. And even though it's not crystal clear exactly why, I believe that she definitely found a family in Naomi, and she definitely saw God in her, as she says that, you know, she wanted Naomi's God to be her God, and so she made the decision to go with her. And as I reflected back of my life as well, there were times where I had to also make a decision in a situation. Growing up, from like a young age, I think I was about 10, my mum has had long-term brain tumor, so it's not the ones that kind of take a massive impact straight away, but it is a long-term continual sickness. And it changed my life and my family's life dramatically, whether I liked it or not. It was going to have that impact. And it took me a long time before I made a decisive change. Part B of my turning point. But eventually I went to Prayer Warriors, and then we learned about reconciling with God. We learned about why there is sickness and why there's suffering in this world. And from that, I decided to have a little one-to-one with God, to have a little chat about everything that's been going on. And even though I'd already been baptized, I decided to rededicate my life into my hands. I saw things from God's perspective, and I decided that I was going to trust him to use me in my situation regardless. And when we trust in the Lord, Psalms 34 verse 8 says that, just taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. And as I began to trust him with my life and how he was able to use me, from then on, it's really been a series of turning points, which brings me to my next point. On the other side of a turning point will be more turning points. Tabani, it's not clicking next. Okay, yeah. So on the other side of a turning point, so the immediate step after the turning point will be a decisive change. And once that process of a turning point is complete, there will be more turning points in life. If you go back to Ruth's story, we can see that after she relocated back to Bethlehem, she had other decisions that she had to make. There was a change in circumstances to how she was going to survive, in terms of how she was going to eat. So she says to Naomi, let me go glean in the fields. So basically kind of get any scraps that were going to be left from those who were harvesting. And that's what her and Naomi were going to survive off. And in that season, she made a decision to be faithful regardless. She chose to be diligent in spite of the little work that she had been given in her hand. And that ended up leading to another turning point in her life, which was the season of singleness and marriage. In her singleness, we can see that in chapter 2, it talks about how she made the decision to hang around with Boaz's young women, and not glean in any other man's field. And even when Boaz was speaking to her, considering to marry her, he was like, I know you haven't gone around to any other guys, and I know that you're a virtuous woman. So she made a decision in that stage in how she was going to conduct herself. And of course, she ended up getting married, another massive turning point, which was in her life. And I believe she also probably made a decision as to how she was going to carry out that marriage, what that was going to look like, and how it was going to bring glory to God. And of course, she then had a son whose name was Obed. And her initial decision, which was technically to follow Christ, she didn't know what her future was going to look like, because she was following a widow to a country she'd never been to before. But with her trusting in God, she was able to see his goodness. And in our lives, we'll have a series of turning points. On the other side of turning points will be more turning points, which means we'll have to make more decisions. But I really like this quote that I found in the Bible Echo. And Ellen White was talking about nations and about like the church at large, but I think it's something that we can definitely apply in our lives as well. And it says, there are periods which are turning points in the history of nations and of the church. In the province of God, when these different crises arrive, the light for that time is given. If it is received, there will be a spiritual progress. If it is rejected, spiritual declination and shipwreck follow. And so here we can see that in each and every single one of our turning points, the Lord will give us wisdom in regards to what he wants us to do and where he wants us to go. And if we follow that leading, and if we follow the light that he gives to us, and we make the decision to bring glory and honor to his name, trusting in him, he will connect the dots in our lives, and we will see his goodness. And so after that turning point at Prayer Warriors, I then moved to Australia for a year. I was like 18, and the only decision and promise that I made to God was that, Lord, I will attend church when I go there. For uni, I stayed at home, and I had seen how my friends had ended up basically leaving the church after going to university, and I decided, okay, this is going to change my life one way or another. I need to find a way to stay with the Lord. And I said, God, I will just go to church. That's all I can promise. I don't want to make promises and not keep them. God knows what will happen after that. But that's one thing I was going to do. And so I made that decision, and I went, and God is so amazing, because I just needed to attend a church, that church at least, just one time. And that was enough for me. Everyone was so welcoming, and I absolutely loved it. And it was a massive turning point in my life. And it was basically a campus church, if anyone has ever heard. It's called Gateway. And it was a campus church, and I learned how young people can love God and how they can be used by him in a circular campus, basically. And so I left that turning point in my life, another change in situation, and I came back to England, and I was back in Leeds, and then I was like, Lord, I'm in my final year. I want to see things from your perspective. And following on what I had experienced in Australia, I was like, okay, we should start a campus ministry. We should start everything that I had seen. And it was hard. I was in my final year. I was already behind because my second year was in a foreign country. And I studied accounting and finance, and everything is pretty strategic, like 1 + 1 is 2, etc., etc., and it follows on from the year before to the year before. But God was like, you're a missionary, do what you've got to do. And so that is what I did, and I can look back on it now, even though that was a crazy decision, and I didn't see the impact of it there and then. Looking back, God really, really used us in Leeds to be able to start something amazing. We've had care groups, we've had socials, we've had campaigns, we've had people make decisions for baptism, we've had discipleship, we've had retreats, and God has been so good. And it's something that we would never have seen at the beginning, but we were able to see his goodness as time went along. And then after that, another changing situation where I started working now. And I remember going into the job that I'm doing now in finance, and the first 2 days, I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and I was like, Lord, I'm going to quit. And the fact that I hated it, I actually tried to use it as a reason to say that this is a sign that God doesn't want me to be here. But God was like, no, you're here on purpose. And my manager and I ended up having a chat about his experience with religion and his background of being Catholic and so on and so forth, and what he's doing now, reading the Bible, trying to know God. And we've had since then some impromptu Bible studies on fasting, on Revelation, on the Antichrist, on so many things. And I've given him the Desire of Ages, and he's been reading it, and we've had conversations. And I was just like, oh, wow, look at God. And in all of this, I can say that when these changing situations happen in our life, when we choose to make a decision to put God first, he will lead us and he will guide us, and we will be able to see his goodness. And the final point of what takes place on the other side of a turning point is God's purpose. And his ultimate purpose is for us to know him more, not to just taste and see that he's good, but to be able to experience him. And in this story, when I'm wrapping up, we see that when they went into the boat and the winds and the waves were, blowing really, really strong, they were afraid. But Jesus said, peace be still. And they said, what manner of man is this? And this was not their first experience with God. They were further along with him. But God allows these turning points to come into our lives so that we can get to know him so much more. Not to be afraid, but so that we can experience him at higher heights. And we can also say, what manner of man is this, no matter how long we've been walking with him. And so I just hope that in life, as your situations and circumstances change, the first thing you would do is seek God's first for his light and make a decision for him. And you can trust him to connect all the dots no matter what's going to happen after that, and know that you will see his goodness and that you will get to know him so much more. So we'll just close with a word of prayer. Dear loving Father, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for the fact that you're in control of our lives. Thank you for the turning points that you allowed to come our way. And Lord, thank you so much for the things that you are able to do through us when we choose to see things from your perspective and walk in your light. I pray that you will help us to not be afraid, but help us to trust you and to know you more, and be able to share our experiences with others as well. I pray all these things in your loving name. Amen.